All right, so the latest storyline in the long line of different storylines associated with the NFL in the past week or a month or so is Odell Beckham Jr. And stories were circulating that the Giants were pursuing a deal involving Odell Beckham last year. And I just found out today those talks stopped because I guess New England was flooding their voicemail with a bunch of offers, so they held off on trying to deal Odell Beckham. And I believe that the biggest reason why he's trying to deal Odell Beckham Jr. was because he's their main attraction. That's why they gave him the contract. Because a happy Odell on the field. He stops doing a lot of those attention-seeking behaviors. He stops being what they consider a distraction to the team, even though I never really considered him a distraction. Honestly, the Giants have so many different issues that Odell's tactics and his behaviors, I think that was the last thing that the team needed to be worried about. I mean, they still have a quarterback position that's not solidified. They had a running back position that was, you just had a revolving door of different backs coming in and out. But ever since they got Saquon, I think they're pretty safe. And I believe that's why they want to move on from Odell Beckham. Now they don't need him anymore because they have Saquon, who has turned into one of the fan favorites in New York. So they're trying to move on from Odell Beckham. Now, one of my conspiracy theories is I believe that something is going to be orchestrated that moves both Antonio Brown and or Odell Beckham Jr. to San Fran. The golden boy of the NFL is Jimmy Garoppolo. Ever since he left Tom Brady, everybody's been painting Jimmy Garoppolo as the next big thing, savior that is supposed to free them from the bondage that is Tom Brady. And I believe that somehow they're going to try to make a move to put two of the best wide receivers in the NFL on the San Francisco 49ers. Give Jimmy Garoppolo a lot of help and restore that mystique that San Fran once had. And I believe they're going to try to make that happen because they're talking about Antonio Brown wanting to go to San Fran. And, I believe somebody mentioned Odell Beckham to San Fran, but that one's more of a stretch than Antonio Brown. But it's whoever the teams want to trade them to. If the team wants to trade you somewhere, they'll send you there. But they're gonna talk, and I'm gonna commentate.
Fox Sports insider Jake Laser predicted this week that Odell Beckham Jr. would get traded this offseason, but according to the line, that would be a mistake. Ralph Fasciano says the Giants would be much worse if they trade Beckham, calling OBJ not only a top 5 receiver in the game, but maybe top 5 player period in the NFL. The Giants went 1-3 in the final games of the season when Beckham was out with an injury. So we're joined again here in the studio by Jason McIntyre. You don't say anything crazy about my Giants.
No, I'm almost close to calling you Jason McIntyre. Oh, Jason McIntyre.
Well, I've got nice things to say about wide receivers right now. So,
do you think the Giants should move on from Odell?
I do, Jamie. I'm sorry. I know you're a big Giants fan. It's funny. Before the playoffs, everybody looked and said, the 5 highest paid quarterbacks, none of them made the postseason. And nobody looked at the wide receivers. Of the top 5 wide receivers, highest paid guys, one of them made the playoffs. Okay? I know Greg Jennings. Well, I'm about to tell you. Greg Jennings, a great wide receiver. We were watching his Super Bowl highlights together one time in the dressing room. Guy's a superstar. I love wide receivers. They're important. Julian Edelman, 53rd highest paid wide receiver in the league. He was the MVP of Super Bowl.
He can't carry Odell Beckham's sneakers to practice.
Stop. Because Odell Beckham is too expensive, and there's a...
That's funny coming from Chris Broussard. But yeah, Julian Edelman has nothing to do with this conversation because the conversation is clearly about the next destination for Odell Beckham. And Jason McIntyre is going to make a whole bunch of points coming from. It was going to make a whole bunch of points that are asinine, really. Like the point he just made about the team needing to move on from Odell Beckham Jr. And the only reason, like I just said, the only reason why they're going to move on from him is because they have Saquon now. And then you also have Sterling Shepard. So you don't need him anymore. Now, something is going to be broached later in the video. And it's regarding the record of when the Giants have Odell Beckham and when they don't have Odell Beckham.
Reason that nobody in the Giants organization, Jamie, has come out and said, not true, we're keeping Odell. Because they're looking to ship him out of town. This is a guy, phenomenal player, his teammates love him. They do not need to spend 11% of their salary cap on Odell Beckham. It's just not attainable. And Greg, I believe that the 49ers will be in play, several teams. You do not need to pay Odell Beckham. They can build around Saquon Barkley, which is what the GM, Dave Gettleman, does. He did it in Carolina when he shipped Steve Smith out of town. 2 years later, behind a ground game, they were in the Super Bowl.
Did they win it?
They did not. They lost the Super Bowl to the Broncos. I think they should trade Odell Beckham.
If you're saying solely...
And real quick, I believe Greg Jennings asked him, did they win it? And the reason why he asked him that, because the whole point that Jason McIntyre just made, the reason why he asked him that was because you ship out your best wide receiver. You build the team around the running game, which your quarterback can run, and you have 2 running backs. You're running a 2 running back system. Your wide receivers are Philly Brown, what's his name? Kelvin Benjamin, who was injured, and not Dorial Beckham. What's the guy's name? Devin Funches, I believe. And then you have Greg Olsen. All right. Besides Greg Olsen, none of those guys are going to help you win a big game because none of them have proved that they can play big time. So you move a big time wide receiver to make room for players or to build a certain system or build a certain play style that ultimately caused your loss against the Denver Broncos, because the Denver Broncos, you talk about a defense that can do so many different things. They can stop the pass, they can shut down the run, they could apply pressure to the quarterback. And the only thing that probably was going to save Cam Newton was receivers on the outside that could gain separation and get open. If you don't have receivers on the outside, you're going to have to run the ball more because you don't have anybody that you can get the ball to. And that's what Greg Jennings asked them, did they win? Because you gave up your best receiver, and even though you got to the Super Bowl, you lost because you didn't have anybody you could throw it to. And even though Kelvin Benjamin was hurt, even if he was in that game, I don't think he would have did anything. Because he probably would have had Aqib Talib in his face, and Aqib Talib would have made his life a living hell during that game.
Because he makes so much money, that's a different situation. He's earned that money, so, and they decided to pay him that, he earns that. That's what he gets. But they are not better without Odell Beckham. They need Odell Beckham on the field, specifically offensively. Let's just keep it on one side of the ball. And I'm going to use one of Chris's. I'm going to give you some facts. With Odell Beckham on the field, they're 21 and 26. Still not a great team. Without him, they're 6 and 15. They're a terrible team. When you look at Eli Manning and his numbers and his with Odell and without Odell, like let's look at this. Before OBJ, 58% completion percentage. With OBJ, he's 67%. Without him in passing, only averaged about 230 yards. With him, he's 30 yards better, 260.
And to add on real quick to Greg Jennings' point, Odell Beckham literally extended the career of Eli Manning. Because I believe if Odell either wasn't as good as he is now, or if they didn't draft him, I believe Eli probably would have been out the door years ago. Because Odell Beckham Jr. is so phenomenal in what he does on the field. He extended this dude's career. Like, Eli should be on his knees praising this guy because he's the reason why you still have a job, man. You didn't get pushed out. And when you go back to that highlight play that really gained Odell Beckham so much attention, that play where he reeled the ball in against the Cowboys, if you look at that pass, the pass was overthrown. The pass was overthrown by at least 2 or 3 yards. Well, no, like 2 yards. Because I watched that play repeatedly, and Odell made an incredible catch. But the pass that Eli threw was just embarrassingly overthrown. And if it wasn't for Odell Beckham's elite athleticism, that play either would have been a pick or it would have just floated out of bounds. They needed to move on from Eli for a very long time, and the Giants for some reason don't want to pull the plug, man. I don't know why. I mean, because he got you 2 Super Bowls. I mean, he won you 2 Super Bowls on the back of 2 lucky catches and a great defense. And their offensive line was nothing to sneeze at, man. And that second Super Bowl run, man, they lucked up and got Victor Cruz, who was probably one of the most electrifying one-year wonders you ever seen. So to get rid of Odell Beckham, like he's not any good, or he's like they wasn't going to get rid of him like that. He's not that type of player. They wasn't going to just let him go like he's Eric Decker. They're not just going to let him go like that because he's not that type of player, man. Like, the Giants had nobody else to reel in the fans. At least, even if they weren't winning, fans will still come to watch Odell play. That's how phenomenal this dude is, man. Like, this team had nobody else. They had no running back. They had no tight end. Eli was a fucking mess. The offensive line sucked. The defense was okay. And that 1 year they played really well when the Giants made the playoffs. Odell was all you had, man. It was all you had. You couldn't let the Giants couldn't let him go. And I believe, at first when I heard that they stopped the trade talks because New England was aggressive with their offers, my first thought was maybe the GM of the Giants looked at it and was like, oh man, Bill Belichick wants this guy. Maybe there's something to this. Before I pull the trigger on this or trade him somewhere else, maybe I need to give this another chance. And for a moment I thought that. But then I thought, like, if they trade him away, what if Saquon would have been a bust? Like, what if he would have played bad or got hurt or, really didn't play as well as, advertised, I guess. Or Sterling Shepard wasn't as good as he played. What if they give away this box office player? On the field, he is box office. What if they give him away and, what you get in return isn't as good as what you gave away, or the pieces that you have in place aren't as good without him? And they kept him because, they at least needed to buy themselves a year to see if Saquon panned out, to see if Sterling Shepard could take over once Odell was out the door. Now I'm pretty sure they're comfortable with it. And if you trade, which I don't blame the Giants, if you trade Odell Beckham, you could get a king's ransom for this guy, man. Like, there are teams that will probably trade at least 3 or 4 draft picks for this dude. I mean, Khalil Mack was a big time deal, but I think the Raiders were desperate. They were desperate. Odell Beckham is a Hall of Fame talent, and he's still young. I mean, I think he's like 25, 26. He's young, man. Like, you pair him up with a quarterback that can throw. You pair him up with a team that has a defense, probably, a couple of young receivers. Like, I'm going to think of some teams. I'm going to think of like 3 teams I think that they should probably trade him to. Or no, it will be best if he ends up there. Not for them. Their thought is not trading him to the place that's best for him. Their thought is taking the best offer. But I'm gonna think on it. And there's a few teams out there that he would be perfect for.
Touchdowns is ridiculous. 241, 179 touchdown to interception ratio without Odell. That's without Odell. With Odell, 132 to 69. Like, if these numbers don't lie, Odell Beckham makes Eli Manning in that offense a lot better. There is no way around it. I don't care what argument you pose. Just because his numbers have allowed him to earn the money that he's making, you want to say, oh, they pay him too much money, ship him out?
And that's another thing, man. And that was another asinine statement that McIntyre made, was he's not worth the money. If he wasn't worth the money, the Giants wouldn't have gave it to him. If you listen to Skip Bayless or Stephen A. Smith or Max Kellerman, they'll tell you that the Giants is one of the most well-run organizations in the NFL. And I'm pretty sure a well-run organization wouldn't have gave this dude all that money if he wasn't worth the money. That was stupid. That was a really stupid thing to say. And it just showed how either biased or uninformed this dude is. I mean, and that's the problem with a lot of these sports commentators, man, or sports analysts. They speak from an emotional standpoint. I'm not going to say none of it is factual. Very limited amounts are factual. Very few times you can find one analyst that will just speak strictly in facts and nothing else. No emotion or emotional tie to sports whatsoever. Most of these fucking pundits, they're emotionally invested in certain teams. So that means they're just going to shit on either other teams or other players because it doesn't fit the narrative of their team that they love. Which is stupid. I mean, your job is to be objective. Be the fuck objective and stop making dumbass statements. And this is, most of the time, this is what they do. And like I said, man, I find myself agreeing with Greg Jennings a lot recently.
It's a whole nother conversation. If you're saying, because they're spending too much money and he's taking up too much of the cap, then you should look to move him. But to say that they don't need him, they're better without him, that is absolutely false.
Just to recap, they're under 500 with him and without him.
Yes, because it's still a team. Right.
And that was another thing he said, was they're under 500 regardless. The Giants are a fucking mess. Anybody with two eyes and a brain can see that and would know that. 3 years ago, or no, 3 or 4 years ago, before they made the playoffs, they had no defense. They had no offensive line. Their run game, like I said, it was a revolving door of running backs. You didn't have one feature back that you could depend on. And it seemed like that was the case as soon as Tiki Barber retired. They never had a back that they could depend on for an extended period of time. I mean, you had Ahmad Bradshaw, you had Brendan Jacobs, you had what the hell is that? Rashad Jennings. I mean, there were so many different running backs in and out of the door, that, now Saquon is potentially the latest feature back that they had. And the last feature back they had before he retired, what was it, 11 years ago, 12 years ago? They haven't had one since. Eli, after his second Super Bowl win, and some might even say before his second Super Bowl win, has slowly declined in play year after year. After his first Super Bowl, slowly declined. And then he picks it up during the playoff run. And the only time he plays well is during the playoff runs. That needs to be remembered because Eli don't play well for an entire season. It was just during those playoff runs that he played well. And then after the second Super Bowl, he led the league in interceptions, twice or three times since his second Super Bowl win? So, you need to have a team. And that's the one thing about the NFL, man. One player can't win you games. One player can be very instrumental in the success of the team, but that doesn't mean one player can win every single game by himself. Brady can't do it. Odell can't do it. Nobody can do it. You need other pieces to step up. And Rodgers definitely can't do it because people believe Rodgers is the reason why that team fucking lives and breathes. No. There are pieces around every player that helps them succeed, man. And Odell needed help in New York. And they didn't play well last year because they didn't have a quarterback. The offensive line was still questionable, and the defense wasn't as good as it was a few years ago.
It's still a team game. I'm not saying that he changes the game and he can do everything because you still need an offensive line. You still need a defense to stop somebody. And
don't have either of
you
those.
still need a quarterback that can get you. I'm sorry, Jamie.
So Jason, since you just said they don't have either of those, why would you think that their record would be better with Odell in the game? I mean, well, their record would be miles better with Odell in the game. You need other pieces, man. He plays offense. He don't play defense. He has no impact on the defense whatsoever. You need pieces, but when you talk about a guy that could make you incredible player after, I always thought Odell Beckham was overrated as a wide receiver. Then I went back and I looked at his highlight reel and I saw some of the amazing athletic things this dude was capable of in the open field, catching a ball in traffic or catching a ball while he's open. But then when the defense starts bear down on him, the fucking footwork this dude has is special. You don't see too many players like that. I've never seen a receiver with his kind of footwork once he has the ball and the defense is bearing down on him. This dude is special, man. He just needs to work on his attitude. He needs to stop the bullshit off the field, and he needs to become a better person off the field in the locker room. You know, because people don't judge you on the great things you do on the field. They judge you by the shit that you do off the field or in the locker room. So he needs to work on that.
You still need a quarterback that can get him the ball, and so that he
So
can
they
be
need a lot of
effective.
stuff. So get him out and get guys in there. Instead of paying him $20 million.
Fred's right on the money. Just stop it. Look, like you said, if they want to trade him for financial reasons, that's one thing. But they signed him. Right. They knew everything you said. They knew when they signed him to that big deal. And Dave Gettleman has come out time and time again and said we didn't sign him to trade. Yes. All right.
They signed him because they needed him. He was their only attraction. And when you have Odell Beckham that don't want to play for you, and he's your only attraction, you start to lose money. And that's and the bottom line is all that matters when you talk about a business or a corporation. They don't care what your politics are. They don't care what your thoughts are, what your feelings are. They don't care. If you make the money, they'll do what's best for you. If you don't make the money, they'll do what's best for them. And that's what it comes down to. And hopefully Odell Beckham understands that. If he doesn't, he needs to understand it. As long as you make these guys money, they will look out for you. And they signed him because he was the only attraction. They didn't sign him because of some asinine reason. I'm pretty sure Jason has cooking in his head. They signed him because they didn't want to lose him. They didn't want him to just sit out. Because Odell not in the game, people are going to be less inclined to come watch a shitty team play. But at least if you have one guy that can make you go, oh man, did you see that shit? It'd be worth you buying a ticket.
You knew the situation. He's the only thing keeping Eli Manning on serviceable. And
Thank you. I've been saying that for a very long time. Eli should have retired probably. No, they should have let Eli go like 3-4 years ago. A very long time ago. After his first time leading the league in interceptions, I'm thinking like you're not going to get any better than this with him. You're going to have to trade him. And then he got them, and that was the worst thing that could happen to the Giants. Eli actually helped them get to the playoffs. Because then it just restored some confidence that you could get the job done. And now you just wasted the last, 2 years on something that will never happen.
gave the numbers, which was great. We saw the difference that a great receiver can make in Dallas. Without Amari Cooper, Dak Prescott alone. With Amari Cooper, they look great.
Amari Cooper was a pivotal piece that the Dallas Cowboys needed. Because Dak needed somebody he could get the ball to and get it out of his hands. And I'm not going to say The receivers most likely were getting open. It's just Dak didn't have the confidence to get them the ball. Because Dak is not a really good quarterback. He's a game manager at best. He can do some great things with the right pieces around him. He needs Ezekiel Elliott on that field to win. To play well. He needs him. He needs a back that can take some of the pressure. No, take a lot of the pressure off his shoulders. Because Dak isn't that kind of player that can play through adversity. He's the kind of guy that he'll play well when everything is going great, but once shit starts to break down, you start to see every single flaw that this dude has. And that's what was happening. When Zeke missed that time, I mean, dude was lost. And that was the start of, I believe, Zeke. He missed the first 6 games his second year. And that was the start of the decline in the second year for Dak. And then losing Des Bryant after, he couldn't play anymore. So they decided to move on from him. Then losing Witten, everybody likes to know his first year in the NFL. A lot of people compared Dak Prescott to Tom Brady. Nowhere near him. And I believe it was Skip Bayless that was doing a lot of that. Nowhere near him.
What the Giants need to be focused on is getting another quarterback. And if Eli starts this year, fine. But you got to get the guy for 2 years from now at least, if not this year. And that guy, whether it's Dwayne Haskins, Kyler Murray, or somebody else.
First, the Giants need to get that offensive line fixed. Because whoever you put back there as the signal caller is going to get hurt bad. They brought in all these new pieces to the offensive line. Even Nate Solder, who was I believe a Pro Bowler, or at one point he was All Pro in New England. Yeah, not the same player for New York. So you need to fix that offensive line. If anything, I'm using my first 2 picks in next year's draft, and I'm drafting offensive linemen, big, beefy, durable guys that will stay healthy and be able to protect whoever you put back there. And then what the Giants need to do, since the Giants, look, I'm not even gonna lie, the Giants have a phenomenal scout team, because they was able to pick up Odell Beckham. They picked up Victor Cruz. I mean, you draft Brendan Jacobs, Ahmad Bradshaw, Sterling Shepard. Took a chance on Evan Ingram. All pieces that worked out. Landon Collins, even though Landon is probably out of there and, he hasn't been, playing so well in the past couple of years. But they have a phenomenal scout team. And they need to scout the quarterbacks in the draft. And they need to find a quarterback between the 3rd and the 6th round that are good, that can do the job, especially if you have a coach. And that's another thing, man. And this is why these teams fell in the NFL. Some of these teams fell in the NFL because they always switching coaches. Every year they bring in a new coach. Like the Raiders were guilty of that. The Browns were notorious for that. Sometimes you just got to go with one coach and you got to stick it out. That's why I was surprised that the Raiders went 10 years with John Gruden, because of the whole not for long moniker that the NFL has built up over their propensity to just let coaches go because they don't work out the first year or second year, and you just let them go. Like Todd Bowles in New York, man. Todd Bowles for the Jets, I believe given enough time, he could have got that team back on track. He did a good job his first year. Won way more games than anybody thought he would. His second year, I believe, was last year. Wasn't so good, but that was because you bring in Sam Darnold. You're trying to bring him along. The defense is, they're okay. I mean, I think you're still a couple pieces away from actually building something there. I mean, you still have things that you need to fix with this team. But I think they needed to stick it out a little longer with Todd Bowles. Now they probably just push them. And then you bring in Adam Gase, who looked laughable in Miami, in my opinion. So, I mean, some of these teams, they do themselves a disservice. And this is why New England stays on top. New England moves on when the time is right, and they stick it out, or they take chances when they believe the opportunity affords them to take chances. And they never take chances on players whose risk is way too high that it could potentially set them back. So
he will be much better if he's got OBJ there. And to have a running back like Saquon Barkley, if you get a really good quarterback in there, now you've got something on the offensive side of the ball. Don't blame.
it all starts with the offensive line, because if you don't have an offensive line to run block and pass block that can do it effectively and consistently, you're not going to win. You're not going to win. How come you think Aaron Rodgers is able to do some of the things that he's able to do? This dude has all-pro offensive linemen like every single year. Every single year. All-pro offensive linemen. You need an offensive line. You don't have to have top-notch receivers. You don't have to have a top-notch running back. But as long as the offensive line can do their job, you should be fine with whatever quarterback you have or whatever quarterback you're trying to build up. You need the line. They need to work on that line first. That's what Indianapolis started to do, and it's starting to pay dividends.
Their poor record on OBJ, because no receiver, no matter how good, can totally turn a team around.
The Cowboys example is perfect because you said they have an offensive line and they have a defense. Defense was top 10. The Giants have neither of those, Chris.
Well, trading OBJ isn't the one of them.
And that whole wide receiver thing, I don't know if I agree with that, because when Jerry Rice left San Fran and went to Oakland, Oakland turned into a championship contender. I mean, nobody was talking about Oakland being a championship contender in the late 90s, early 2000s until Jerry Rice got there. And now this team is fighting in the playoffs like they're trying to win the damn thing. And they probably, I'm not gonna say they would have beat St. Louis, but if they could have managed to still beat New England and move on to Pittsburgh, beat Pittsburgh, I think they would have had a better shot than what they. I don't know. I don't think anybody was ready for Tampa Bay. And also Randy Moss. When Randy Moss came to New England was a West Coast style offense where they primarily used the running backs, tight ends. They used a whole bunch of motions and different formations to take advantage of defensive weaknesses. When they got Randy Moss, it was just a spread vertical. You may have one running back in the back, but he was mostly either a decoy blocker or he was running out in the pass. And Tom Brady went crazy. Randy Moss went crazy. And that shit was crazy. Like, it was the first time we've ever seen Tom Brady play that way. We've never seen him play that way before Randy Moss got there.
Because it frees up cap room to go after.
So basically what you're saying is, if you're a great player, you just don't take a lot of money.
Right. No, I'm not saying that.
That is. You think Amari Cooper's going to say?
He's not taking up 11% of the Cowboys' cap, Greg. Not
Yeah,
yet.
exactly. They traded for him. Not yet. He's not making that kind of money yet. And also, like, if you just looked right there at Jason McIntyre's face when he was looking at all these big black dudes and Chris Bouchard staring at him, he looked like a fucking like a mouse in a fucking mousetrap. Like, what the fuck? Like, his head was swerving, like, out of fear. It was funny. All right.
Okay, so we'll see what happens.
How was that OBJ's thing? They knew when they sat down and made the contract what it was to be able to hold on to a player of his caliber. Greg is right. He's earned that money. They didn't give it to him because they liked him. They gave it to him because they looked at everything. And the other thing, is that his fault? It keeps getting...
Exactly. That's what I keep saying. They gave him that money because he was their only attraction. They knew that they could get that money back with him on the field. They needed him to be happy. They needed him to play. That's why they gave him that money. If they didn't need him, if they had Saquon last year, like before this season, and if they had if Sterling Shepard was able to hold up the offense, you know, mainly like how Pittsburgh is trying to do with Juju Smith-Schuster, they would have moved on from Odell Beckham last offseason. They would have moved on from him. But because he's the only attraction they have, and they didn't want to just give him up without making sure that making sure that they need him to get it done. Now that they feel comfortable that they don't need him, now that Saquon is looking like a future All-Pro running back, and maybe you got something special in Sterling Shepard, you can move on from this dude, man. You can move on from him. They feel comfortable with doing it. They gave him that money because, one, he earned that money. He's one of the top receivers in the league, and they needed him.
That's really he is a great player.
No doubt about it.
And you need to stop this whole money thing that you always want to attach to people. So when things go bad, you look and go, well, because he makes too much money, and if they do well, nobody ever brings up the money.
Yeah, exactly. And I 100% agree with the point Rob is about to make about the whole money thing. If a player is playing out of his mind, all right, look, people like to say Tom Brady isn't making nowhere near the amount of money he could be making if he asks for it, because of how great he is and how great he plays. But if Tom Brady was an average quarterback like Alex Smith, they'll be talking about this dude, like whether or not the money that he has, he's even afforded or he's even worth. Why is the first thing that we go to attach a player's value is how much money they make? Like Tom Brady is one of those players that's kind of putting the kibosh to that whole thing. Like, I'm one of the top quarterbacks in the league every single year, even if my numbers don't say it. I'm one of the top quarterbacks, and I don't make anywhere near the amount that some of these quarterbacks make in this league. Why is money always... And McIntyre thinks how a lot of people think your worth is how much money you're making. That's how much... If you make a lot of money, that means you're good at what you do. If you don't make any money, that means you're not good at what you do. Well, that's not true. Like, when it comes to basketball, we think that the best players that play in the world is in the NBA. Not really. I mean, you got these dudes overseas, man, that's doing a lot of next level, next generation type shit. Like, look at Luka Doncic, man. This dude looks so natural on the basketball court, and he's a rookie. He looks like he's been playing for at least 5 years, and he's a rookie. And honestly, in his opinion, he thinks the NBA is it's nothing. Like, I was playing a tougher style of play overseas. Like, this is nothing. And then you got some of these dudes that go amateur, man, who, like, as far as basketball goes, some of the best ball handlers in the world, some of the best dunkers in the world, some of the most incredible athletes in the world. Like, I look at N1 athletes, man, like those basketball players, man, and they're still some of the most impressive human beings I've seen play basketball. And I'm not saying that they could play in the NBA, because if they could, I'm pretty sure they would to make the money. But you can't attach money to a player's value. Like, oh, he's making all this money. Is he worth it or not? If a team is giving him that money, he's worth it. Even if nobody else thinks the player is worth it.
It's a knee-jerk reaction just because you're not looking at the entire Giants roster and saying, Eli's bad, the defense is bad, there's other things. But it's not OBJ. That's not the reason they're bad.
He's taking up 11% of their salary cap. He's making
11%. Before they gave him that money, was this even an issue? Was this even an issue? Because before they gave him the money, there were a lot of people talking about, why aren't they paying this dude? He's obviously earned it. Now he's making too much money, and it's not giving the Giants a chance to improve the team. No, the Giants aren't making good moves with the moves they're making. They're not making great deals. If they're making deals at all, they're not drafting correctly. Look, man. Odell Beckham is making a whole lot of money because he earned that money. If it wasn't for him, there would be no attraction in New York. The Giants would be the fucking Cleveland Browns or the Sacramento Kings. You know, nobody would want to go there. Nobody would want to play there. Nobody would want to watch. Nobody would want to pay money to be involved in that. So, look, man, I don't know. It seems like Jason McIntyre has this idea. Nobody's going to take him off that idea. I mean, which nobody should be able to. If he's convicted enough, and if he believes he's right, nobody should shake that. And I respect that. Even if he's wrong, he's still sticking by what he's saying. But he's wrong. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
$20 million. So they couldn't pay the receivers.
They couldn't do this.
Make the play.
Odell just started making this money.
Yes.
They couldn't make moves before then.
Well, if you remember last year, Adam Schefter had a report.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, maybe the moves they're making aren't the right moves. It has nothing to do with Odell.
Odell Beckham will be traded before the draft. They toyed with this idea last year. Then they didn't trade him. Now, here we are again. Jay Glazer with the rumors. Time to trade Odell. I'm telling you, look at Gettleman, the GM. Look at his...
They wanted to trade him, but they didn't have a contingency if it didn't work out. Like, if they trade him, they don't have anybody else to step up. They don't have another attraction. They don't have nobody. The people in New York are going to want to come and watch. Shit, if they trade Odell last year, the Jets are looking like a far better team than the Giants look. Even though the Jets were a better team this year than the Giants. But they didn't want to trade this dude without a backup plan. That is the worst thing you could do. You give up your most profitable asset and you have nothing to back it up with. That's how you start losing money. You need that attraction. In sports, you need that player that can bring in the fans. And Odell brings in the fans. Even though people don't like his attitude, they'll still come to watch this dude play. That's what a bona fide superstar athlete does. Even though players don't like him or players don't want to watch him, people don't like him, people don't want to watch him, they'll still come to see him. And they didn't have anything last year. Now, what makes this year different is now you got Saquon. You probably feel more comfortable with Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard. Now you feel like you're comfortable to move on. And now if you trade Odell, you possibly could get a bevy of picks, maybe some players to help improve the team. But once they move on from Odell, there's no going back, man. This is why they keep changing their mind. Once you move on from Odell, now you have to start making the right moves to help the team. Before, you could just, I guess, leech off of his talent and use that to make your money. But now, if you move him, now you don't have that superstar. Now you have to fucking find somebody to replace him. You have to find ways to make the team better. And shit, honestly, if they move Odell, I could see Eli being out of the league within a year. Retiring or getting cut or something.
It's history, okay? He goes to Carolina after 1 year, shipped Steve Smith out of town, the great receiver, okay? Steve Smith was angry. 2 years later, with a ground game, they were second in the league in rushing. They go to
and then the next year, what were they?
Well, they were 10th in the league in rushing.
I mean, come on, that was 1 year.
Because Carolina was one of those teams, like you have these teams almost every single year. Maybe a year here and then a year there. But you'll have these teams that, like Jacksonville 2 years ago or last year or something like that. You had Jacksonville. You know, you had Carolina. Seattle came out of nowhere. You know, you have these teams. The Giants did it twice. The Cardinals. You know, Carolina in 2004 or 2003. Tampa Bay. You have these teams that come out of nowhere. Nobody expects them, but they are one-hit wonders. They're phenomenal 1 year. Then the next year, when teams start to find out what they do and learn how to shut it down, they shut it the fuck down. And that's why sometimes you'll see a player play as well 1 year, like Peyton Hillis. Peyton Hillis for the Cleveland Browns, old running back, 2011 or something. Peyton Hillis ran for 1,000 yards, was on the cover of Madden, was supposed to be the next big thing in Cleveland. What happened the next year? Bam, nothing. It's done. He hasn't had a year like that since, and I believe he was out of the NFL within 3 years. This happens in the league, man.
It's been like a roller coaster. Up and down. And it's a different NFL, too. Even since then, you know, it's a little bit different now.
He's 67 years old. Gettleman's old school. He turns 68 later this month. He is old school. He's defense and running. That's what he wants to do, okay?
Well,
I'm just telling you, that's the Giants.
Are the Giants better without Odell Beckham?
I got to see what they do with the money.
Are the Giants better without Odell Beckham?
I think they can be, yes.
Are the Giants better without Odell
I
Beckham?
would rather build around Saquon Barkley than Odell
You
Beckham.
gave 3 non-answers, so that's
Yes,
enough.
fine, yes,
That's until Saquon Barkley outplays this contract, and then he's taking up a left field.
How about the money Eli's taking up?
And then if you had drafted a young quarterback,
Great fucking point. Great point. Eli is probably making a shitload of money. And this dude is probably nowhere near worth his talent versus the money he's making in his contract. I'm pretty sure those numbers don't add up. But we want to sit here and we want to talk shit about Odell.
last year, your quarterback wouldn't be taking up all
I
that.
would have done that. I agree with you. I don't think Eli Manning.
But let's put it on OBJ.
I'm not putting it on him. I'm just saying.
Yes, you are.
That's exactly what he's doing. And I'm going to end it here because right now he's just... He's trying to sidestep and bob and weave, trying not to, get hit with a big hit. But Odell Beckham was worth the money that he was given. I believe he's still worth the money that he's given. He's a top-notch player. He's young. He hasn't had a significant injury that takes him out for a prolonged period of time. I mean, this dude's career is still ahead of him. I mean, he probably still has years. And I'll tell you what, man, and I heard this. If they would have traded this dude to New England, Brady probably plays until he's 50. Now, and this is another thing, and this is probably just me wanting this to happen. If the New England Patriots find a way to both finagle the Giants out of Odell Beckham and Brown off the Pittsburgh. Now, Brown won't happen because Pittsburgh don't like New England and they refuse to give them anybody that furthers their dynasty. But if they are able to, there's only so much compensation you can turn down before you start to think about the offer that you're given. Now, if they make, I think it's going to be harder for them to trade for Brown. But if they're able to bring Brown in and they're able to bring Odell Beckham in, that would be incredible. But I know that won't happen. They're trying to find a way to get Odell or Brown to San Fran to try to help Jimmy Garoppolo supersede Tom Brady and the evil empire that is New England, because they want Jimmy to fucking succeed. This is why they were on a hype train after he went 5-0 after getting traded to San Fran, because they need him to succeed, because he is the guy that's supposed to dethrone Brady. So we'll see.